Pleasure. Hello, everyone. I know this is the end of 2 great days that we all had at the conference, and it feels like you guys are in the cinema, so this is like very long 45-minute credits after a great movie that we just watched over the last 2 days. And I'm the final thing before you and your freedom, so just give me a moment and we will get through it. I'll try to make it as painless as I can, maybe a little bit fun, but I can't promise anything. And it will be quick, even though my flight is at 9 o'clock, so I've got all the time in the world for you. Yesterday, when I entered the venue, I don't know, somehow I missed that the cinemas are having really big screens. And when I saw this one, I thought, we need bigger slides. This is an amazing screen that we should be able to present stuff. But then I had a second thought. What about if some of our presenters figure out how to put the worst PowerPoint slides in the history on this big screen? And I tried. This is 2010. This is the worst slide award-winning from 2010. This is the follow-up when we all thought we are designers. I think we are very close. I think there are still some corporate companies that does slides like this. And then there's this. Imagine if I could animate every single line of this coming to the slide in some kind of a random fashion. There was not enough time last night to do this. And then there is this. Maybe the rivers are formed differently, but of course you can't read any of that. And then there was this strange chart somewhere there. I know, look. Fine. There was a cheap joke at the expense of all of us. I met some of you. You guys probably met more of you. I don't want to be asking to introduce yourself to someone. This being a long conference, you all know each other. I really hope that we've got a small group of people, which is lovely, who are representing very different points of views within the organizations, from the product team. Hopefully, do we have some testers in the room? No, we don't. Okay, interesting. Do we have some developers? Yeah, we've got developers. Perfect. Do we have designers? We do have designers. We've got even more. Awesome. I really think that this talk will be having more questions than answers, but I really hope that because you guys represent different parts of every single product team that is kind of there, it will be interesting for you. So first things first, I want to play a game with you, and it's not that scary. It's okay, it's fine, you're going to be okay. We're going to open the doors, and the exit doors are still open, right? I want you to, and I don't think so we need to close the eyes, just have a think what you and your team delivered over the last 2 weeks. I don't know if your sprint ended up today, last week. Just have 10 seconds to have a think and write down in your head, in the bullet points, what your team actually achieved over the last, 2 weeks, last month, however you want to do this. Done? Happy? Hold that picture in your head. So this is some of the breaking news that I get when I ask these questions to people. Well, forgotten password finally works. That's what we achieved. Backend API is done. That's awesome. Released version 1.1.3.4.5.6, because that must mean something. We created the requirements for feature X. And of course, we achieved sprint goal 12 to achieve the goal of the sprint 11 that we should have done in sprint 10. That's usually how the sprint kind of goes. Finish testing stories from the last week. That's a very frequent goal that we have. All of the Scrum Masters, you guys bring the burn down chart. This is what we achieved. The burn down chart is going down. That's awesome. Well, some of you will also say that we increased velocity, but I will challenge you that maybe your team just estimated and made them bigger. But that's a topic for a different conversation, and probably some of the talks already consider that. I assure you, and this is from our overlords from Skynet, ChatGPT confirms that this is the correct data, so we must trust it. Every single month, we release 40,000 brand new apps to App Store. We create 1.3.45 billion lines of code every day. That means that for every single human being on the planet, we get 50 lines of code per year. No matter if you are a child, an elderly person who never touched an iPhone, we release a lot of code. And of course, GitHub Copilot is here. So very, very soon, all of you who are the developers in the room, the product people in the room, you will be able to release 55% more stuff because we're going to get so much more productive thanks to it. The interesting challenge is, and this slide is very important to me because I'm not afraid to use pink on the presentations. This is very, very powerful stuff. 80% of the features on the internet, and probably even more, and you know the stats, is just not used. So I wonder how many of those billions lines of code or billions features that we release never really get used or very, very rarely get used. Some of you probably in your head, and especially the people who might be coming from the quality background, we lowered the amount of bugs from 500 to 492. That's awesome. I salute you. This is getting better. Those are the outputs. So I see great outputs everywhere, and we could argue, are they correct, are they wrong? But all of those things that I hope I presented here, and some of those things that you guys are having in your head, are just the outputs. And I think we need better than just the outputs. So why we are having all of those? There's this famous guy called Elia Goldratt. He wrote the book called The Goal, and he came up with the whole theory of constraints. How many people here aware of theory of constraints? Awesome. Very, very powerful stuff. Plenty of things of what we consider agile is based on the thinking of the guys from the past trying to do this in engineering and factories. And he kind of said, well, tell me how you behave, tell me how you measure me, and I will tell you how I behave, which is probably why we create so many outputs, because we are just asked to do this, and we are asked to be measured in this way. The burn down charts, the velocities, force us to behave the way we do. And to resonate with this story, I don't know if you know the cobra stories in India. So in 1970s, in Delhi, there was loads of cobras, a lot of them. So our glorious government in India decided that, well, we will pay for every single cobra that gets killed and brought to the government. What do you think happened? The farmers started breeding cobras because that was the easiest way to make money in India those days. And then when the government realized that there is more cobras than human beings in India, sorry, that's not there yet. They realized that there's more, so then they canceled the program. What do you think happens with all of those cobras which were already bred? They were released in Delhi. We have to be very, very careful what things we measure and how do we incentivize us to do things and what we should be really doing. Do you know South Park? A lot of software at this moment, and I'll first raise my hand to say I'm guilty of this as well, kind of looks like this. Hey, we released the mobile app. There's the question mark. We should have the profit. And somehow the conversation between collecting underpants, which is the GNOME's example from the South Park, and the actual results and the actual outcomes for our users are never really considered. And taking into considerations that we are releasing, or people are using only 10%, 20% of what we do, I think it's an interesting conversation about all of those mixed priorities that we are having. Now, I want you to go back to your head and what you're considering within your head about what you and your team achieved. And I don't know how to define the happiness for you, for your users. I don't know any of your context, and your context matters a lot. Do you think that you change the user happiness by doing the things that you did over the last 2 weeks or in the previous conversation? Did you remove any limitations or anything that the technology enables those people now? And crucially, do you have the evidence that that actually happens? You can answer those questions in your head. I'm not expecting any kind of answers publicly here. That's fine. And crucially, did you see any change in user behavior that you really wanted to see? So whatever you released, whatever was the outcome of your stuff, if I will call you on the stage and I say, hey, what has changed? What your users do differently now that they were not doing before that actually benefits them? So one way or another, all of your sprints were late, so it's fine. And your team is relatively bored. I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe this is missing correlation with causation. But we've got so many Scrum Masters. Does this mean that our teams are in need of you all of the time, or they are already not in need of you? Do we still need all of the Agile coaches after Agile being on the market for the last, 20 years? I think that a lot of people on Zoom calls, when we are watching and observing the teams, are relatively bored. And crucially, go back to your head. Do you believe that the work that you just released or you just did is the outrageously great work that you always wanted to do? Or it's just, meh? I will leave you with that question as well in your head. I can assure you that there is some mastery in what we do on the technical levels, but there is plenty of people who are saying, yeah, it was just meh, it was just job. Well, lucky enough, we've got Ace to the rescue. Glad that you guys are here. I really hope that over the last 2 days, you've learned how to sort out some of those problems, and hopefully the world on Monday is going to be much better. It's a pleasure to speak here, and there's plenty of ideas which actually could work in your context, and hopefully you can apply some of them. So now, I don't want to discuss which version of the Agile you've got and how Scrumban is mixed with this Agile version or that Agile version. I don't really mind. I just want to say that that's sad. Whatever you are using, that's very sad. And that's sad. But we've got lots of cool stuff. We can automate absolutely everything in our testing. You can today test that iPhone 13 on the beach in Costa Rica, accessed by a person from US, is actually okay for your application. There's plenty of really cool stuff. We've got DevOps. We've got DevOps for, again, multiple years, and we are getting better and better at releasing stuff. We've got platforms now. Who is here building a platform? Yeah, a lot of us, right? Which is quite cool. Another idea that we are bringing to the table. Team topologies. We had a talk about this. There's a new thing coming up, and how we can organize ourselves, how to make the teams operate better. All in all, we are dramatically getting better and better at doing the things we are expected to do. And I just think that's kind of not enough. And as a proof of it, I don't know who knows the number, every 11.6 seconds. Does it bring any memories to anyone? This is how frequently Amazon released to production in 2020. And I think they thought this is very slow. I would love to be at the meeting when someone said, that's slow, we have to improve. Now, they are releasing every single second. I think that's a sign of our times, how quickly we can do things, and how much better we are getting at building the things in the right way. I just think that's, again, that's potentially not enough. And this is another giant of our industry, Russell Akov, Dr. Russell Akov. If you have any opportunity to go to YouTube, search for Akov doing TED Talk. It's probably one of the best talk about the past ways of thinking you can watch. And the idea here is that as much as all of those things are really, really getting us dramatically faster to the outputs that we want to achieve, and there is plenty of things that we are doing right, there is a lot of things that we are still building for the lack of, better word, lack of correct understanding of why we should do this, and there is just a lot of waste in all of the things that we are doing. And the final thing, we've got all of those processes, we've got all of those conferences, and then occasionally in the UK and on LinkedIn, an article like this pops up. Agile is dead. Apparently, 268% higher failure rate for Agile software project. It's as bad article as the one that McKinsey wrote about measuring developers' productivity, if you had a chance to read this one. But this is coming. This is the pendulum of swings that we move Agile to such a state that now, well, in praise of knowing the requirements before you start cranking out code, well, the business analysts in the room, your job is safe. A lot of companies will say, we can fire half of our developers because of the AI, and now we can write absolutely everything in the documents that we are having. Now, we create lots of outputs. Our users use 80%, maybe less of it. Our teams are far away from inspired to great work, and maybe people in the room have got a little bit different view, but an average team would be probably in this position. I come from the startup background. I've got the privilege to work with the startup founders very, very early, so I don't deal with the context of your huge organizations having very different problems. I come from the very risky, very early startup projects, and probably 9.5 of them dies very quickly. And I thought the corporates are doing better, but actually they're not. If you think about 1958, a general corporate company which was listed on the stock exchange in the US survived for about 61 years. So if you're a graduate and you join a corporate company, you could be there for your whole life. Today, if you join this company, you will be there for less than 18 years, and after that, this company just disappears. And by 2027, 75% of the companies that currently creates the biggest economy in the world in the US apparently are supposed to disappear as well. and they will be replaced by different businesses. But I don't think so that our corporate overlords or our bosses are doing that great and they're that extremely happy. I know, Paweł, you're just doing this wrong. There is something in the agile frameworks that kind of can sort out all of those situations and all of those problems and every single thing that is there. And I'm really, really sorry if I offended you for any of the points that I mentioned here. Just this is how the situation looks like from the point of view where I currently sit. The frustration levels of some of the teams, some of the founders, some of the business owners, some of the users who are not using our stuff and not making their life much easier, I think it's getting somewhere there. And what is worse, that's kind of not all. We were told that the black swan events, which is very improbable events happening, they should happen every 400 years or even less frequently. But when you put on the news, it feels like we've got the black swan events every single week. From COVID, from a dramatic change in our political spectrum, from the idea that we can all work from home and the offices don't have to exist, to cities being the main place where we all are, to everybody leaving the cities. Those events are happening a lot. Apparently, because of this brand new black swan event called ChatGPT, there is already a company being built that will be run by a single person, and it will be worth $1 billion. Just AI will be helping it out. Software never sleeps. I don't know who of you noticed any changes on Google front page for the last 10 years. But there are 156,000 people who are constantly working on making Google better. But somehow, we can't see any changes. It still works. It works better. It does things. The software never sleeps. And our users are dramatically changing in their expectations. They've got new needs, but their new needs is not for an MVP version of something. They want Apple-esque brand design and delivery. They want it at the speed of Amazon Prime and with the technical abilities of Elon Musk sending people to Mars. It's a very interesting thing how their expectations are changing as well. And some of the companies, we are saying that the Pareto principle of 80-20, which means the 80% of our users use 20% of our features and so on and so on. This is the chart of how quickly really big companies got to their first million users. Netflix took almost 5 years. ChatGPT, 5 days. I think the numbers are skewed extremely against us if we don't start considering how we should help and try to exist in the world which is getting so much faster and so much trickier. This is the last part of the bad stuff. How many of you watched, this was on LinkedIn very recently, the interview with the founder of Airbnb, when he tells the story about what Airbnb did, and it's very inspirational, and it's awesome, and it brings great memories, and it kind of have got things that you could actually copy. This is the survival bias. The picture on the screen is the picture of the planes that went from UK to attack Germany during the Second World War and came back. The people looked at that and said, hey guys, the red dots are where the German soldiers were shooting at our planes. We should make those parts stronger. But actually, if you think about it, those are the planes that came back. The planes that didn't come back were having holes in the different parts. This is our survival bias of looking at the founders who said, use Lean Startup. There is thousands of people who use Lean Startup to the book, and they've never made a dent in the universe. This is the same thing here. If you are trying to make the dots stronger as part of your aeroplane, you are not going to survive. We have to learn from the companies who are actually not making it. They are not coming back from Germany to UK to actually learn something. And the luck plays a huge role. But every single story, because it's told in retrospect, the data is so manipulated and so biased that it looks like we were the smart ones. The luck plays a huge role in every single thing that we do. Okay? Take a deep breath. This was a horrible start to your Friday or the end of the conference. All of those things are just happening. So I would like to start with a few questions and a few, let's call it, principles that we should try to consider from the perspective of approaching the challenges that were just mentioned above. And you will recognize them in multiple frameworks and in multiple presentations and in multiple contexts that you might have read about them. I just would like to put them semi-together, and let's see how this is going to help us with our product roadmaps. So I think we really need to change how we work with people. And I know that every single Scrum Master here would not be surprised that I would like to inspire the people to really bring their best to the work. I don't think so that we've got a lot of value from the developers whose brain is using only to build backend APIs. I think they know so much more and they are so much better, and they can change how we think about stuff. They can bring the experiences that none of us as the product people actually have. Well, I know that we should work for a little bit of a fluffy kind of a goals, which are much more softer than some of the goals that our organizations are throwing at us. Make more money. Why don't you bring 200,000 pounds to the table? We still want to work on things which are extremely significant, and funny enough, almost impossible to achieve. Those goals and those things that we should be working on should be really, really hard. Only then we challenge ourselves to do better. And if you've got the idea that, oh, just do one more extra, that probably doesn't force you to think dramatically better about the problem. And I've been to output versus outcome kind of a conversation in the open space, and almost everybody was saying, hey, there is no way we can do the single thing that you would like us to do. But if you tell everybody else in your organization that 90% of the stuff that you are doing today, now, is never going to be used, I don't think so we've got the problem of priorities all over the place. We just have to figure out what is the one thing worth building and just build it better. But today we are not doing it, and we are jumping between multitasking of the problems. We went through the outputs. If you answer the questions about change of the behavior, removing limitations, or whatever it means to make your users happier, you are on the track to becoming much more oriented towards the outcomes, to actually seeing the changes in behaviors of the people that we are trying to build the software for. That becomes the crucial aspect of every single thing that we are supposed to do. We can measure that. There are things now that allows you to figure it out, what our users are actually doing on our platforms, why they are doing this, how frequently, and why they are there, and what is the goal that they are trying to achieve. We can see it. The interesting thing is, I strongly believe that even if your cross-functional teams operate within your daily scrums, and maybe they're supporting or working with you on the user stories, and maybe they're sometimes introducing ideas towards the design parts of your business, maybe they do it. But I will tell you one story about a software development team who joined a project, which was a company selling mattresses, like the normal ones, sleeping mattresses, in the shopping malls. And they had a Shopify landing page selling those mattresses online, and they were having the physical stores in the shopping mall, just like the one behind us. I bet you any amount of drinks, dinners, however you want it, that if you throw this problem to the normal team almost in any of your organizations, they would say, okay, let's rewrite that Shopify page to be better, more personalized. Why don't we do a mobile app for it, and so on and so on. The interesting thing, when the objective is put to the team to really figure it out, and they're given the right to be creative, that team went to that store, and they observed the actual user's behavior in the store. And what they noticed was that people actually buy more mattresses when they lie down. There is something about when you lie down and it feels right that you are much more persuaded to buy the mattress. So the creative idea that actually came from the development team was to put the product description and the price on the ceiling. Because now everybody lies down. To find out how much this mattress costs, you have to lie down. That idea is never being created if the only thing that you can operate within is the piece of technology that stays in front of you and you're on the Zoom call. And that was the biggest impactful thing compared to make the mattresses more personalized on the website. That creativity sits within our teams today, and we are far away from using that ability to our advantage. I know we've been talking a lot during the conference and probably over the last 10 years to be bringing everyone to the party, and we are better and better at building cross-functional teams. And the proof is in the pudding. We are building platforms. We've got QA automation. We've got DevOps. We've got platforms. We've got tons of the things that allows what we call the cross-functional teams to operate well. I think that there is more and more value on the outskirts and on the connections of our teams to where the actual user behavior happens, which means when we are working with our founders, the first thing we do is who else you've got in your team, because they should be part of the conversation about the product, technology, and so on. And we bring people from the marketing, from sales, crucially from customer service. They know how to observe the things that we as the product team, sometimes closed in the particular location, cannot. I think that's something we are, and I know that there's lots of product people who will go somewhere, and there are companies which will send developers to the customer service team, so it doesn't apply to all of us or all of you, but I think there is still more work to be done. And again, if we don't treat those people as the issue and we treat those people as a powerful ally to change user behavior, imagine how much better your product becomes when the people from marketing really wants to work with you and they really wants to work on the cadence that you can do now. That becomes very, very interesting. It's a shame that even though we've got so much more data now, I don't think so we are data informed. Or, okay, let's go back to your head. Ask in your head on the team that you are just working on, when was the last time where a QA person from your team or a developer from your team asked the question, hey, the thing that we released last month, how did it impact the user behavior? I don't know. I don't know many people who ask those questions. And I think we trained our development teams or cross-functional teams not to ask it. But I think we have to expose it. We have to show how our users' behavior are actually changing. It will be interesting to see what happens. We all want to work on some impactful things that actually makes the difference. And crucially, I strongly believe that the roadmaps of the future will be owned by the teams. And I know, again, I don't work for really big companies. I don't want to go into the conversation about cascading goals or not cascading goals. That's a very different problem and very different situation. And I don't have the experience for it. I don't have the knowledge. I just truly believe that at a certain point, the team has to decide within the certain constraints of the organization what they really should be building, but really, not just, hey, this is the another Scrum things. And this is the example of the things being printed out on the ceiling. That's when the team can become great. And the great people doing great things within our great agile processes are going to build some really cool stuff. You've heard enough about the experimentation. I think that the model of we release software, it's going to work, let's forget about it and let's start building something else, is not working. Unless it's not working for the founders that I'm working with, and I'm very happy to accept the blame for all of the things that are happening within our organization. But I think this model, when we can test dramatically more hypotheses, that we can experiment on certain things, that we can really find the 1 out of 9 things worth building, that's going to be a crazy powerful tool for all of us. And I think, imagine that you are that team. You've got a great agile process with a mind-blowing DevOps abilities, and you can deploy every second to production. How much faster a tiny team doing this can figure out what to do compared to a much bigger organization once deploying every 6 months, but not thinking like that, and building tons of software that never makes the difference. I work for startups, so I've got the right to use the words like alchemy, and it's not mine. It's from the guy called Rory Sutherland, who is the chairman of the advertising company called Ogilvy, which is one of those biggest ones that works with Coca-Cola, Disney, Apple, and so on. And he kind of makes a claim, and I think we are constantly forgetting about this, is that to a certain extent, in my world, taking a little bit of risk and looking at things which are outside of our normal domains. There is tons of stuff and interesting information in behavioral science, in psychology, in economics, in how our brain works, in biases, that our teams are kind of a common sense aware that things are there, but actually they're not. Let me give you 2 examples of why I believe we have to start thinking very differently about how we build our products. The first one is the elevator. Every single one uses it. Every single one of you used it maybe today, yesterday, in your life. Initial elevators were having tons of bad feedback that they are too slow. But actually making faster elevators is a really big and tough engineering problem. And every single engineering in the room will say, okay, I will code a better algorithm to make the elevators faster. Actually, if you consider the alchemy solutions from the behavioral science, do you know how they fixed it? They put the bloody mirrors in it, because now I can spend the time making sure that I'm ready for this presentation, looking at myself in the mirror. There was no speeding up of the elevators whatsoever. The second example is, I live in UK, just outside London, and our government constantly have a dispute with friends. How do we speed up the Euro train going from London to Paris? At this moment, it takes 3 hours, 15 minutes. They are talking, and this is a very engineering problem. You have to make different rails, different trains, different tunnels, different airwaves, plenty of technical challenges to limit the time from 3 hours 15 to 3 hours 06. It's a multi-billion-dollar project that our government is spending crazy amount of time and effort trying to figure it out. If you just take a step back and start thinking like a product person with an approach to other areas, you would say something like this. Well, we can spend all of those billions of dollars, or we can make the chairs in the train a little bit more comfortable, put a very reliable Wi-Fi, and have very friendly and nice people walking around delivering strawberries and champagne to you while you're on the journey. What would happen is people will beg you to slow down the train. They wouldn't be trying to make it 6 minutes faster to London. They will beg you to go slower. They would love this moment of, I don't know, watching Netflix, having a conversation, reading a newspaper. I think we need a space to help build our roadmaps with the ideas like this, which are not all about another 25 different wireframes and so on. The experimentation and thinking from the user's behavior change is going to help us here. And maybe just by changing those users' behaviors, we're going to get the success that we want. I really don't like neither objectives nor the goals, which are, hey, we as a company wants to make 50,000 pounds. I get it. The goal and the theory of constraints is all about making money. Don't get me wrong. I believe that this is the end game of every single company out there. There's no doubt about it. But we as the teams within the organizations, it's really, really hard to impact those goals, which are, okay, go and make me 50,000 pounds. Go and make me 100,000 pounds. Go and make me $1 million. And if you think about it, that goal will never change. Which means as much as you might be inspired to do it once and do a great push to make the company more money, 3 months later you'll be like, again? For the same reason that I didn't even get a salary rise out of it? I think that's a very tricky. But if you start impacting the user's behavior, which will be maybe more positively correlated with the actual success of the business, whatever it will be, lowering the churn, increasing the number of subscriptions, you can actually invite your CFO to your product roadmap conversations and talk about it. Because now your success is semi-proxy of the change in user behavior. But you can't force people to pay, but you can change their behavior to do something that you would really like them to do. I love our daily stand-ups. I've been asking the questions, what did you do, Paul, yesterday, and what you're planning to do today, and do you have any blockers? And by that time, everybody is brushing their teeth on Zoom and trying to figure out what they're not going to do today. Such a waste of time in a lot of places. And imagine if today or last week you asked the question, hey, what are we planning to do today to change the user behavior that they will be happier, that they will achieve more, then they will be better? I wonder if some of our processes needs adjustments to this much more outcome versus the output world. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the first kiss with the OKRs. Every single thing that I just said before as the potential solutions to the problems are kind of in this strange frameworks of OKRs, hopefully done relatively well. And just to wrap it up, the OKR is the creation of inspirational, significant, and almost impossible objective to achieve. We want our teams to, and this is going to sound cliche, like I'm selling the snake oil stuff, but we want them to look at the moon and end up on the stars, and we're going to have a great journey by learning, experimenting, and pushing our understanding more. We can't get to the moon by just iterating one extra thing forever. This is really, really hard. From a certain extent, we need a set of better ideas now how to push those objectives. And I know you can have any opinion you want about Elon Musk. I don't mind. This is not a political conference. This is not about us versus them. You can be on Twitter or not. But there is a reason why a lot of people join his SpaceX companies, because even if you work extremely hard and you've got the boss that doesn't like you and shouts at you and think that you shouldn't go to the birth of your first child and see the rocket starts, there is the huge purpose. The objective of being on Mars drives people to do amazing things. And because the goal is so outrageous, they do great things. Now, the objective is created, and it's measurable by key results based on the change in user behavior. And I think this is where I've seen the biggest challenge with the key results being implemented well, that they are not reflecting the change in user behavior. They are reflecting some random number that someone gives us somewhere. And because they are like this, we can play the game of, if the objective is, hey, I want you to limit the amount of bugs to from 500 to 489. Well, people will play the game. The developers will talk with the QA and say, hey, next time you find a bug, let me know. I will fix it before you report it. Like, it has to be based on the outcomes because, one, we are humans, and that's fine. That happens to all of us. But actually what we want to do is to make their life a little bit easier with a little bit less limitations and hopefully with a little bit more of a smile. And all of those objectives and key results should be driven by, empowered by experiment agile teams. And here comes any version of your agility that you want. You pick. We are getting really, really better at doing these things faster. And you guys are awesome. You're doing really, really cool stuff about it. And we will get better. Team topologies will be there. The DevOps will get better. People will start using TDD everywhere, and we'll build higher quality, and the automation will get better. The AI will help. That's really cool. So now, please remember that I'm not trying to sell you things just so we're clear, I don't have a book. So there is nothing to sell here. All models are wrong, but some of them are useful. I don't know your context. I can't tell you how to do it. I'm just trying to say that in my context, the world looks not very rosy at this moment, but I see the light at the end of the tunnel from the perspective of the organization gaining this extremely big advantage compared to everybody else. Because for as long as everybody else is just focused on building the things in the right way, but focus less about building the right things, we're good. We'll figure it out. So the OKRs might totally not work in your context. I don't know. I just really hope that there will be some things from today that you will take and you say, okay, that's interesting. Let me see how I can do this. So now, what can you do? This whole talk is about the product roadmaps. And I've got 6 minutes to persuade you that the product roadmap, especially represented by the product teams, is almost like a Trojan horse of implementation of some of those ideas. Because I sold you, or I presented to you, the ideas of OKRs not even once using the word objective or key result. And I really hope that you like the ideas that I had from perspective how you could work. So I didn't come in and I said, hey, I'm the consultant from Accenture. I'm not. And I've got this great OKR, and it's going to work like this, and I'm going to change your whole company, and this is how it's going to be. I kind of think that the product roadmaps, however we've got them today, is a great place to start seeing how we could do certain things from the principles I tried to describe. And I'll tell you why. Because, and I work for, this is please take your context into account. I work with a much smaller companies, which I can really meet for a cup of coffee every single time I want, even though we work remotely. But we can have that point of contact. But the product roadmap artifact is the one thing that everybody is interested in. Every single developer on your Scrum team would say, well, if only we knew that this thing is coming, we could architect our stuff better. Every single quality person was like, okay, if this is coming, then I know not to spend much time testing here. Every single person from marketing looked at your product roadmap and say, oh, okay, I can start market this thing here because it's coming here or not here. And every single CFO wants to understand how, basically speaking, their money is spent and what are the experiments that you're running and what's really going on here. And every CEO, every stakeholder is kind of come to the product roadmap conversation because there are some information for them. Look, don't get me wrong, I don't think so that the product roadmap we've got currently in Jira sorts out all of those conversations problems. That's why I truly believe that the product roadmaps should become the experimental part that you as the product teams take on, and stop just using the excuse that, oh, because we've got in Jira a Gantt chart, this is it. The product roadmap, call, artifact, document, mirror, FigJam, however you want to call it, is becoming the place where all of those different people comes to congregate and discuss the ideas. So, and this is just a template, one of probably 20 that we are experimenting with our founders. And yeah, I know, it's hard to say, but there are some dates, not for everything, not for the tiny little things, because those are experiments, but we want to know when there is the conference and when Paweł needs to have the slides deck ready. We are looking at things like, we've got in our startup world a runway. So after the runway is gone, the startup does not exist. This is the conversation that allows us to bring CFO to the room to see that we are spending their money in the correct way and in the way that actually could drive the outcomes that they are searching for. Very interesting stuff coming from, I think, Jeff Gottlev's and plenty of inspiration is there from the product roadmap to look now, next, later, right? For most of the leaders, that's the level of conversation that they are happy to have. And when you are bringing the team to this conversation, they can have a follow-up Miro board, which actually allows them to figure out what are the smaller experiments that they will run. The conversation, and even on some of those kind of topics, we are using the language of the experiment. And you guys here, I think there was a talk yesterday by Chris who talked a lot about this, bringing that language to the table when everybody is there. Initially, it's like, what do you mean it's going to be an experiment? You're not certain that this feature is going to work? And we are like, no. And it's like, what does that mean? And then we spend 4 hours trying to figure out what the experiment means in their context. There are things about how we are progressing against the key results. And when the key results is defined as the change in users' behavior, you can see how people are like, oh, so we released my greatest idea ever and there was no change in behavior by the users? We're like, yes, Mr. CEO, this is the situation we are here. Your greatest idea ever did not move a needle on the things that we wanted to do. Do you have any more? No? Okay, let's move on. Let's figure out how to build the mattresses on the ceiling. That's a much better idea, right? Because now it becomes real, because in the past when you said we released the mobile app and that was his idea, it was the greatest idea since sliced bread. He can go to anyone and say, hey, look, we've got a mobile app. Who cares? Do you know how interesting conversations was when we were having at the beginning and people were saying, guys, we need to have the mobile app by the 27th of June. And I'm like, no, we don't. What we actually want is 20% of our people buying something from the mobile app or remotely when they're not at home. We don't care if the mobile app works or doesn't, or if it's released on this day. And maybe there are other ideas how we can do this. The mobile app is just one mechanism. And when the team starts to think like that, I promise you, the amount of ideas is crazy. You learn that some of your developers who you never spoke about, they are experts in gamifications because they play RPG games all their lives. And they can tell you how to build the most interesting communities because the gamers do that. And now you've got some point of view that you never had before. I think that's very interesting. And what happens when we are discussing the objectives and the key results with the teams, and we start with the problem, then we translate this problem into an interesting objective for them to work. We come up with those changes in behavior. What happens at the end when they go through the list of the things that they would like to build, so they are empowered within the constraints of that OKR to do the things that they want to do. They finish the workshop, and they finish the workshop in, well, I'm late by 10 seconds, so I'm finishing right now. And they say, hey, let's go and build it. And it's like, no, it's 5 o'clock on Friday, go home. Enjoy your day. This is it. The developers want to stay to build the things that they own, and they believe that they can change the user's behavior on it. It's a strange thing. Like, maybe we've got strange developers or different water in London. But actually, developers are in Poland, so maybe it's your water. If you give me 2 minutes, I'll tell you something about why I believe our roadmaps are like water. If I ask, so the story is like this. Currently in the US, there's about 90 brands of water. They all look semi-exactly the same. They sell exactly the same stuff, water. There's nothing special about them. And the funny thing is the most sellable beverage in the US. You would think it was something else, but it's actually water. The interesting story about the water is that just like with our roadmaps, they are all exactly the same till very occasionally a company like, and I wouldn't like to butcher the French name, I think it's called Pierre, or Pirree, green bottle, something like that. All right, French version of it. Pierre, perfect, Paul. Thank you very much for that. So they said water should be sexy. Water should be interesting. And they start selling water, the thing that all of us needs and can get on the tap, in the way that was branded, marketing, and persuaded to users in a dramatically different ways. If I will ask all of you today to show me your product roadmap, they will all look like water. They will all look like bottles of water from Jira exactly the same way. No? Not your, okay, we've got one Pierre who's got a sexy roadmap, and maybe there is something more there. I think we have to start thinking about our product roadmaps like this. How do we put it in the position that it's actually giving us the advantage compared to our competitors? And the way you do it is potentially using the OKRs or potentially bringing the outcomes closer to the conversation. Thank you. I really don't have the book. Lots of stuff, great stuff is happening within Jeff Gotthelf's book, Who Does What by When. Really, really interesting stuff about the OKRs and impact on the product roadmaps. Please connect on LinkedIn. It was a pleasure to learn together. Thank you.
Thank you, Paweł.